Listen to it, that rapid, hollow clicking. It's 7:30 p.m. on a Friday. The office floor is completely pitch black, except for one glowing monitor in the corner. Behind that screen sits Mark. Mark is completely exhausted. His coffee went cold 3 hours ago. His eyes are bloodshot. But his chest swells with a sudden, pathetic rush of adrenaline. Why? Because an email just dropped into his inbox. 2 words. Thanks. Sent from my iPhone. The sender? A regional director who is currently on his 3rd scotch at the country club. Mark smiles. He leans back in his ergonomic chair and genuinely believes he just secured his future. He thinks he is outsmarting the system. He looks out across the sea of empty desks. The desks of his colleagues who left at 5 p.m. to actually see their families, or go to the gym, or live the finite life they are trading their hours to afford. Mark pities them. He thinks they are lazy, average, and destined for mediocrity. He wears his chronic overtime like a badge of honor, entirely convinced that taking on the workload of 3 people for one person's salary makes him an indispensable asset. He couldn't be more wrong. Mark isn't building a bulletproof career. He is aggressively subsidizing a multi-million-dollar machine with his own unrecoverable life force. He isn't the hero of the department. He is just highly optimized, low-maintenance machinery. Corporate loyalty is not a virtue. It is a psychological leash manufactured to control the deeply insecure. The system doesn't reward endless sacrifice with promotions and respect. It rewards endless sacrifice with more work, while quietly stripping away your leverage. You know a Mark. Maybe you are the Mark. The guy who raises his hand before the manager even finishes asking who wants to take the lead on a weekend project. You tell yourself it's for your resume. You tell yourself it's paying your dues. You justify the missed dinners and the ruined weekends by claiming you are playing the long game. But let's strip away the corporate jargon and look at the brutal reality. You aren't playing a strategic game. You are addicted to the microdose of dopamine you get from being called a team player. You are running so fast in the maze, sweating out your youth and your sanity, just to catch a piece of plastic bait that the Human Resources Department calls Employee of the Month. Let's look at the anatomy of this specific type of desperation. Mark hasn't had a meaningful conversation with his spouse in 3 weeks. His entire identity is tethered to a plastic keycard and a chat status that always shows green. He operates under the tragic delusion that the company keeps a secret ledger, a magical, invisible scorecard where every answered Sunday email and every skipped vacation day is tallied up, waiting to be cashed in for executive power. The secret ledger does not exist. The market does not care about your suffering. It only calculates your replacement cost. When you constantly volunteer for extra work without extra pay, you aren't showing initiative. You are broadcasting to the market that your personal time has absolutely zero monetary value. You are telling the predator that you are entirely willing to be consumed as long as they pat you on the head while they chew. The colleague who leaves right on the dot at 5 p.m. sets a firm boundary. The corporate structure inherently respects boundaries because boundaries require negotiation. You require absolutely nothing. The greatest illusion of the modern workforce is that endless operational efficiency scales perfectly into wealth. But the environment you operate in relies on a completely different set of physics. You think you are the spine holding the operation together, earning an invisible shield of immunity. But the crazy part isn't that you are working yourself into an early grave for a company that would replace you in a week. The crazy part is why your relentless, self-sacrificing behavior mathematically guarantees you will be the absolute first one fired when the budgets get cut. Phase 1. The corporate Stockholm syndrome. Let's look under the hood of this engineered delusion. The modern open-plan office is not a place of business. It is a highly calibrated psychological terrarium. The fluorescent lights, the forced socialization, the meaningless corporate retreats, these aren't perks. They are behavioral anesthetics. They are meticulously designed to blur the line between your personal identity and your economic output. The system desperately wants you to believe the company is a family. Because if the company is a family, setting firm boundaries is a toxic betrayal. Asking for overtime pay for your Saturday hours is considered selfish. You aren't doing a job anymore. You are contributing to a culture. This is where the trap snaps shut on Mark. He suffers from a terminal case of corporate Stockholm syndrome. He has genuinely fallen in love with the entity that holds his finite time hostage. He actively defends executives who freeze his salary while reporting record quarterly profits. He looks at his direct manager, a middle management warden, who is just as financially trapped as he is, and sees a father figure. The most devastating addiction in the modern workforce is not ambition. It is the agonizing need to be perceived as useful by a system that views you entirely as a disposable utility. Human resources aren't built to protect you. They are trained to profile you. They smell the fear of irrelevance. They identify the exact psychological makeup of the employee who will run blindly in the wheel until their nervous system collapses. They know that if they simply dangle the artificial bait of a new title in front of your name, you will surrender your youth to catch it. But the bait is an illusion, and the maze was never designed to be solved. You are just running faster toward a dead end. Phase 2. Weaponized validation. To dissect why someone eagerly volunteers to do the work of 3 people for the salary of 1, you must look at the emotional deficit. Mark isn't staying until 8:30 p.m. because he is deeply passionate about supply chain logistics. He is staying because the silence of his apartment terrifies him. He is paying with his unrecoverable life force to cure a chronic lack of validation. The corporate machine weaponizes this exact trauma. It aggressively hunts for people pleasers, the tragic individuals who fundamentally confuse being exploited with being essential. When Mark takes on a massive weekend project, he gets a fleeting rush. A tiny, pathetic burst of dopamine fires in his exhausted brain. It is the exact same neurological loop a lab rat experiences when it presses a lever and a synthetic food pellet drops into the cage. True exhaustion is not a byproduct of hard work. It is an intentional corporate strategy. A permanently tired mind cannot plot a rebellion. When you grind out 65 hours a week on a 40-hour fixed salary, you completely lose the cognitive bandwidth to question the architecture of your prison. You are too tired to build a parallel stream of income. You are too worn out to realize you are being systematically robbed. You drag yourself home, pay premium fees for food delivery because boiling water feels impossible. Scroll mindlessly to numb the anxiety, and wake up to repeat the cycle. You desperately convince yourself that you are playing a high-level game of strategic career advancement. You believe your relentless sacrifice is building invisible equity. You believe that when the economic downturn arrives, your loyalty will act as an impenetrable shield. But the market operates on cold, emotionless arithmetic. It does not factor in your late nights or your stress-induced insomnia. And when you finally strip away the corporate jargon and look at the brutal, unyielding math behind your hyper-proactive behavior, the reality is entirely sickening. Phase 3. The dilution of worth. Let's strip the emotion completely out of the room. Let's look at the raw, undeniable numbers. The corporate system relies heavily on your absolute inability to calculate your own depreciation. Mark makes $60,000 a year. His contract stipulates a standard 40-hour work week. If he actually respected his own boundaries, did his job, and went home, his baseline value to the market is roughly $29 an hour. It's not life-changing wealth, but it's a stable baseline. But Mark is an addict. He is starved for the illusion of importance. So he volunteers for the weekend sprint. He stays late to cover for an incompetent manager. Suddenly, Mark is consistently logging 65 hours a week. By keeping his fixed salary of $60,000 and inflating his hours, Mark has actively authorized his own pay cut. He has mathematically diluted his own market value down to $17 an hour. The summer intern, whose biggest daily challenge is formatting a spreadsheet, makes $20 an hour. Mark is operating with the stress levels of a junior executive. But financially, he has positioned himself as the absolute cheapest labor in the building. When your hourly rate plummets because of voluntary overtime, you start bleeding capital, just to survive your own work ethic. You pay premium delivery fees for lukewarm dinners because you lack the physical energy to boil water. You are financing your own exploitation. The market does not respect voluntary suffering. It exploits it, packages it, and pays it out as dividends to shareholders who wouldn't recognize your face in an elevator. Efficiency without leverage is just a faster path to your own expiration date. You aren't a corporate hero. You are a lab rat cheerfully oiling the gears of your own mousetrap. You have established a terrifying new baseline, and that exact baseline is the weapon they will use to destroy you. Phase 4, the punishment for efficiency. This brings us to the core question. Why is the guy who volunteers to take on 3 different roles mathematically the absolute first casualty during a corporate restructuring? It defies all traditional logic. You would think a company desperately wants to keep the hyper-efficient workhorse. But corporate finance doesn't look at your sweat. It looks at long-term risk. When Mark eagerly volunteers to absorb the workload of 2 other departments, he creates a massive single point of failure. The system loves the free labor initially, but management knows you are running on fumes. They watch your eyes glaze over during Monday syncs. They see the unforced errors creeping into your midnight emails. They know that your physical collapse is not a possibility. It is a scheduled event. Corporate restructuring is entirely about mitigating future liability. If they fire Mark, they eliminate a volatile, exhausted asset who is one panic attack away from a massive operational failure. They can replace his broken spirit with 2 fresh hires for the exact same budget. But the trap is even more sadistic. By consistently working 65 hours a week, Mark has permanently destroyed his own performance metrics. The moment he tries to scale back to a normal 40-hour week, just to save his crumbling sanity, his output drops by 40%. His manager doesn't see a human returning to a healthy schedule. The manager sees a catastrophic drop in performance. In the eyes of the machine, Mark is no longer setting boundaries. He is now aggressively underperforming. You cannot negotiate from a position of absolute surrender. When you give the machine every drop of your energy just to maintain your current miserable position, you have 0 leverage left. You are running your engine at the red line. Just to stay perfectly still. Just to stay perfectly still. But there is a way out, and it starts with a fundamental rewiring of your professional psychology. You have to kill the employee of the month inside your head. Phase 5, the weapon of apathy. The corporate machine is entirely allergic to boundaries. It thrives on your anxiety and feasts on your desperate need to be seen as a team player. To break the cycle, you must introduce a terrifying new element into your daily routine. Cold, calculated competence. You arrive at 8:55 a.m. You do exactly what your contract dictates with absolute surgical precision. You do not volunteer for the weekend task force. You do not join the mandatory fun committee. And when the clock strikes 5 p.m., you vanish. You become a ghost. You don't apologize for leaving, and you don't check your inbox on your commute home. This isn't quiet quitting. That is a fabricated term invented by middle managers who are terrified of workers enforcing their legal contracts. This is called acting your wage. Let me be very clear about how I view this environment. Passion in the modern workplace is a financial liability. It is a psychological vulnerability engineered by human resources to extract premium, executive-level labor at discount, entry-level rates. The moment you become emotionally invested in a corporate entity that measures your life in quarterly spreadsheets, you have already lost the negotiation. The true operators in this world, the ones building actual generational wealth, do not seek validation from a regional director. They seek equity. They seek cash flow. They view their 9-to-5 job strictly as a utility. It is an ATM. Nothing more, nothing less. You walk in, you punch the code, you extract the capital, and you walk out. You don't stay in the lobby trying to make friends with the ATM. When you stop bleeding your energy into a company that doesn't care if you drop dead tomorrow, a miraculous thing happens. You suddenly have your mind back. You have your evenings back. You have the raw cognitive bandwidth to actually build a life outside the fluorescent terrarium. That unrecoverable life force you were spending on a Friday night spreadsheet. You now redirect that into building a silent empire, a side business, an investment portfolio, a high-income skill that actually belongs to you. This is the essence of stealth wealth. You look like an average employee on paper, but in reality, you are quietly accumulating the leverage to fire your boss. But to do that, you have to sever the emotional umbilical cord. You have to stop caring. Phase 6. Invisible leverage. The predator only knows how to hunt the desperate. When your manager realizes that you are completely unfazed by their artificial urgency, the power dynamic instantly shifts. They can't weaponize your fear of missing out because you have opted out of the game entirely. The guy who volunteers for everything is operating from a position of chronic weakness. He is begging the maze to keep him. The employee who masters cold competence holds all the cards. If they fire you, fine. You have been using your recovered time to build a robust financial safety net. If they keep you, fine. You continue to extract their capital while exerting the exact minimum effort required to maintain your position. You become untouchable because you simply don't care about climbing their plastic ladder. You're no longer running on the wheel. You're just standing inside the cage, quietly observing the machinery, waiting for the exact right moment to step out. You stop being the loyal lab rat, and you start acting like a mercenary. You trade your skills for their money, and the second the transaction is complete, the relationship ends. The people who escape the rat race aren't the ones working 80 hours a week trying to impress a CEO who makes 300 times their salary. The ones who escape are the quiet ones, the ghosts. The people who realized early on that the greatest flex in the modern world isn't a new title or a corner office. The greatest flex is absolute, unshakable autonomy. If you want to stay in the office until midnight, desperately hoping the system finally loves you back, keep raising your hand. keep subsidizing their yachts with your insomnia. But if you're ready to take your life back, if you're ready to stop being the cheapest asset in the building, drop a comment saying discounted martyr. Everyone else will just think you're bitter. But we'll know you finally woke up. My name is Daniel Rath. Stop volunteering for your own exploitation, and I'll see you outside the maze.